Hello everyone, so welcome back to lecture 5. So in lecture 5 today we'll be we'll be continuing with support vector machines, right? And in particular we'll actually study the optimization problem involved with support vector machines, and in particular we'll study the concept of Lagrange multipliers, and then we'll look at duality of SVMs. Okay. So what we study today will be in some sense the stepping stone for the next lecture, where we'll actually talk about, first we'll talk about kernels, we'll talk about a little bit about kernel machines and how to define kernels from the dual of SVM. And secondly, we'll talk about the relaxation of SVM by including slack variables, so that we can kind of go above the kind of restriction of linear separability, right? So far we assume that we are going to look at linear separable models, right? So the models will only work if the data is linearly separable. So we'll actually remove the assumption of linear separability. Okay. So the strategy so far has been to choose the hypothesis function, and so far we have looked at linear functions, right? So we looked at W transpose X plus B in the case of linear regression, right? Or we have looked at sine of W transpose X plus B in case of perceptron, right? And actually SVMs also have the same hypothesis function, right? So it's sine of W transpose X plus B. Next is to construct a loss function, ideally convex. So we looked at squared loss, right? And we looked at perceptron loss, right? And in the case of SVM, we don't look at a specific way of actually solving a kind of loss function in a sum of terms, but we looked at an optimization problem that involved a convex kind of optimization problem, right? So I'll basically call this the SVM formulation. So we'll actually see that with SVMs, we can actually come up with a loss function, right? And kind of write it as a kind of loss function in the same way that we have written the squared loss and the perceptron loss. But we'll come to that in the next lecture, right? So far we'll just kind of look at the formulation of the SVM as basically the constraint formulation, right? And then once you kind of come up with your objective function, you actually want to minimize your loss to learn the parameters. Okay, so this is a kind of a recap of SVM. So we have the support vectors, right? So these points are the support vectors over here for my different classes, right? And this is my W transpose X plus B equal to 1, and this is W transpose X plus B equal to minus 1, right? And then this is basically my decision, my separating hyperplane, right? Or my decision boundaries, a linear decision boundary. Okay, so we also saw that the margin over here is basically 2 over the size of W, and then we are basically trying to maximize 1 over size of W, or equivalently minimize the norm of W, right? Such that subject to the constraint, right? So the constraint is that my data should all lie on this side or on this side, right? So this constraint, we saw that we can write this kind of concisely as saying yi of W transpose xi plus b is greater than equal to 1, right? So this is basically the problem, right? So I have my minimum of the norm square of W. So by the way, I can write max of 1 over the norm of W is basically equivalent to minimum of the norm of W, right? And this in turn is actually equivalent to minimum of the norm of W square. They are equivalent in the sense that the argmin, the minimizer, is the same, right? So it just turns out that this is an easier problem because it's a quadratic program. So you typically do minimum of norm of W square such that this constraint is satisfied. Okay, so we solve the quadratic program. This can be solved easily. Okay, so now we'll take a slight detour and we look at constraint optimization. So constraint optimization, this is the basic story, right? So here, case of SVM, if you recall, I have minimum of norm of W square, right? So this is my f0 of x, subject to yi of W transpose xi plus b is greater than equal to 1 for all I in 1 to n, or actually I think, okay, so I'm just saying all I think it's capital N. So capital M is a notation we have been using. Okay? So there are capital M number of data points, and for all I in 1 to capital M, I want this to be true, right? So this can actually be written, so I can write my fi of x now in this notation as minus yi of w transpose xi plus b, right? And I can basically, or actually plus 1, right? So I can essentially write yi of w transpose xi plus b greater than 1 is equivalent to now fi of x less than equal to 0, where fi is defined above. Okay, so if you kind of just wrap the math around, you will see that this is basically the same. Okay. All right. So now coming to constraint optimization. So here the f zeros are not necessarily convex, right? And the constraints need not necessarily be linear. So the kind of general formulation is that you have essentially non-linear constraints. Typically, these are convex functions, so the constraints need to be convex, right? But yeah, but as I said, I mean, if your function is linear, then it doesn't matter if it's like less than over here, right? So over here, it doesn't matter if it's less than or greater than, right? Because you can actually invert it. So in this case, the case of SVM, actually you have a greater than 1, greater than equal to 1, right? You can invert it in this way. So you can come up with an affine function that is actually the negative of the function here, and then you can write your constraint in this way. Alright, so we look at a quick example, right? So the example here is that you basically want to minimize x1 log x1. So actually there's a typo here, this should be in r square, right? So there are just two variables, x is basically x1, x2. So I'm solving min of x in r square, x1 log x1 is the first term over here, plus x2 log x2. My constraint is x1 plus x2 is equal to 1, x1 greater than equal to 0, x2 greater than equal to 0, right? So again, this way I can actually flip this. So in the notation that I was using, this is hi, right? So this is basically my hi x equal to 0, or actually I'll remove I, right? So I'll just call this h of x greater than equal to 0, and then this is basically f1x is less than 0, f2x is less than 0 in my notation, right? So these are the constraints. So this is just an example of a constraint optimization problem. Okay. So now the critical thing, this is called the Lagrangian, right? And these terms are actually called the Lagrange multipliers. So the idea is that I can convert my unconstrained problem now. I can convert my constraint problem and actually bring my constraints into the objective via the idea of Lagrangian and Lagrange multipliers. Okay, so I define my Lagrangian as Lx comma lambda comma nu, right? This is the symbol nu, equal to f0x plus the sum of I from 1 to m lambda I fix plus the sum of I from 1 to p nu I hix. So if you recall, my constraints, my problem was minimize f0 of x subject to the constraint that my fi of x is actually less than equal to 0 and hi of x is equal to 0, right? So whenever I have inequality constraints, right, with a less than sign, I require my Lagrange multiplier to be greater than equal to 0, right? So this is my constraint. Whenever I have equality signs, the nu that is there over here, that doesn't need to be greater than equal to 0. So this is just something that you might want to keep in mind, right? So the Lagrange multipliers can be thought of as enforcing soft constraints, basically. Okay, so here we have this as my objective. So this is f0x, right? So this term over here is nothing but f0x, right? We saw that this is h of x, this is f1 of x, this is f2 of x, right? So this is exactly what is happening over here. So this is nu1 multiplied by h of x, right? and then here I multiply this by f1 of x, right? Actually minus x1 is f1 of x and minus x2 is f2 of x, right? So this is exactly as basically was there over here. So I have the plus lambda I, and then I have the plus, so the lambda I still has a plus, but because my f1x is minus x1, that's when I get xn, right? Okay, so now that we construct the Lagrangian, right, the idea is that you can come up with a dual function by actually minimizing x. So we remove the variable x and we come up with a dual. So this is the whole notion of dual. Okay. So my problem, so my primal problem is where I minimize f0 of x, right, subject to h of x or hi of x is equal to 0 and fi of x is less than equal to 0, right? So this is my primal problem, and then I basically have my dual problem where I basically maximize my lambda and nu of g lambda nu subject to lambda being greater than equal to 0. Okay, and my g lambda nu, right? So this is, so I'm not yet claiming that they are equivalent, right? So this is just, I'm just saying that this is the primal and this is the dual. Okay, so g of lambda nu is actually inf, or you can think of it as min, right, of this term, which is L x comma lambda comma nu, right? And if you recall, L of x comma lambda comma nu over here was exactly f0x plus sum of I from 1. So I'm just trying to recall the number of terms over here. So okay, so I have m terms for fi and p terms here, right? So it's m here, so I have fix. So I'll just write this here, I from 1 to m and I from 1 to p, right? Plus sum of I from 1 to p, and actually there's a lambda I here multiplied by nu I of nu I of hi of x, right? So this is the Lagrangian term. Okay, so this is the primal, this is the dual, and all right. So now we'll actually go over an example and try to construct this Lagrange multiplier, right? And then we look at the dual problem. Okay. So I start with this problem here. So again, recall that this is my f0 of x, right? So my Lagrangian, which is L of x comma lambda comma nu, is nothing but x1 log x1 plus x2 log x2, right? Plus nu1 of 1 minus x1 minus x2 minus lambda 1 x1 minus lambda 2 x2. Okay, so all right, so now if you recall, my g of x, my g of lambda comma nu is basically minimizing x over L of x comma lambda comma nu, right? So how do I minimize x? Well, I can take the gradient with respect to x and set it to 0, right? So that's exactly what I do. I take the derivative of dl with respect to x1, right? And this derivative is basically, the first term is just log x1, right? The second term is x1 multiplied with the derivative of x1, which is 1 by x1. So I use the product rule over here, so it's plus 1, right? I do the same thing with x2. So actually here I just take the derivative with respect to x1, so I don't need to do it with x2, right? And then I have minus nu1, right? I have minus nu1 minus lambda 1 equal to 0, right? And by setting dl by dx2 as 0, I will get log of x2 plus 1 minus nu1 minus lambda 2 equal to 0, right? So this expression, this basically implies that my x1 is exp of nu1 plus lambda 1 minus 1, and this implies my x2 is exp of nu1 plus lambda 2 minus 1. Okay, so now I solve for x1 and x2. Once I solve for x1 and x2, all I need to do is just basically plug my x1 and x2 into this expression, right? Because I get the value of x1 and x2 that minimizes this term, right? So now having minimized it, I want to finally get a function which is a function of lambda n, right? So I'll just kind of substitute this over here, right? So my g of lambda comma nu, right? This term was actually is nu1 plus lambda 1 minus 1 multiplied by exp of nu1 plus lambda 1 minus 1 plus nu1 plus lambda 2 minus 1 multiplied by exp of nu1 plus lambda 2 minus 1, right? So here all I've done is I've just substitute x1 as the exp and the log. So this term is basically a log of this, the log of x1, right? So sorry, this term is the log of x1, this term is x1, right? Similarly, this term is x2, this is log of x2. Okay, so far so good. Then I actually kind of use this. Now I put together the second terms. So I have plus nu1 of 1 minus exp of nu1 plus lambda 1 minus 1 minus exp of nu1 plus lambda 2 minus 1, right? And then finally I have minus lambda 1 times exp of nu1 plus lambda 1 minus 1 minus lambda 2 exp of nu1 plus lambda 2 minus 1. Okay, so what happens here? Well, what I need to do is I basically take a look at this, and then a few terms get cancelled, right? So if you see, there is nu1 multiplied by this, right? And there is nu1 multiplied by this, right? Similarly, there is lambda 1 multiplied by this, and there is lambda 1 multiplied by this, right? So this term gets cancelled, this term gets cancelled, right? Similarly, you can also see that this term gets cancelled and this term gets cancelled, right? So both of these terms are actually essentially cancelled out, right? And so are these terms. Okay, so the only thing that is actually left is I'm left with my nu1 from this, right? And I'm left with these terms, right? So this is nu1 minus exp of nu1 plus lambda 1 minus 1 minus exp of nu1 plus lambda 2 minus 1. That's it. So this is my g of lambda nu. Okay, so this is my primal problem, right? This is my primal problem. And now my dual problem is actually where I maximize this g of lambda comma nu, where g of lambda comma nu is basically this expression, right? So this is exactly g of lambda comma nu, okay, such that subject to lambda greater than or equal to 0. So this is the dual formulation now of the problem. Okay, so we kind of went through this example and we saw now the primal and the dual formulation. Okay, so this is the dual formulation. So actually the dual construction will follow for most examples, it will follow the similar kind of technique that we saw. Okay, all right, so now we have the primal problem, right? Alternatively, you can also write the primal problem exactly equivalent to this problem. Okay, so the min I've just replaced with the inf. For all technical purposes, actually, let's assume that min is in. There is a kind of a technical difference between min and inf, but I won't get into it in this course. Okay, so you can think of min and inf to be technically the same. Okay, and then this term is actually exactly f0 of x. Okay, so this is something that maybe you can think about why that's the case. Why is this exactly f0 of x, right? But I think one thing to keep in mind is that I'm doing a supremum of this, right? And whenever x violates the constraints, I have my values going to infinity, right? When I do the supremum. So that means that I want to make sure, right? I want to make sure that I meet the constraints, okay? And when I meet the constraints, the value of the supremum of lambda greater than 0 of the supremum over lambda comma nu of Lx lambda nu, right, is exactly f0 of x, right? So that's why you can actually write this term to be fc to be basically inf of the supremum of the Lagrangian. Okay, so now we saw that so now conversely, right, conversely the dual problem, which is supremum over lambda comma nu of g lambda nu, is equivalent to the supremum and the inf, right? So here I have the infimum and the supremum, infimum followed by the supremum, right? And then here I have the supremum followed by the infimum, right? So I've kind of flipped the min max. Okay, so that's what duality is. If you have seen or if you have kind of heard about duality somewhere, basically duality is trying to flip the min max. It turns out that you can't always flip the min max. So there are only certain conditions in which you can actually flip the min max. Okay, so the dual problem is always concave, even if the primal problem is not convex, right? And the reason for this is that L of x comma lambda comma nu is actually a linear function in lambda and nu, right? And a minimum over a set of, or actually an infimum over a set of linear functions is actually concave. So anyway, this is something that you would have seen maybe in a convex optimization course. I'm not going to prove it over here, right? But it's just something you can keep in mind, that the minimum of a set of linear functions is concave, and that's the reason why L of x comma lambda comma nu is actually a linear function, right? And because of this, the dual problem, which is maximizing g, so the g quantity over here is actually concave. The critical thing in duality is that you need to be able to solve this problem to get the infimum, right? So that's probably where the trickiness comes in the case of non-convex optimization. So if the non-convex optimization problem can actually solve this infimum and get the dual, then it's actually a concave problem, right? The problem oftentimes is that you are not able to actually solve this in closed form. Okay, so the main idea of duality, the primal versus dual, right, is that, okay, so this is the dual problem, right? So this is the supremum over the inf of x, right? And we saw that this term is actually g of lambda comma nu. So this is a dual problem, and this is exactly the primal problem, right? So we saw that this term is actually exactly f0 of x, right? And this is the primal problem, right? So the dual problem is always less than equal to the primal problem. Why is that the case? Because for all x, g of lambda comma nu is actually an infimum, right? It's actually an infimum over all values of L of x comma lambda comma nu. So because of this, g of this is actually less than equal to L for all x, right? What this means is that in particular, I take a feasible point x prime and a lambda greater than or equal to 0. Note that L of x prime comma lambda comma nu is actually less than equal to f0 of x prime. Okay, so because this is the case, right, then right, so the kind of critical aspect is that x is feasible since it satisfies all the constraints, right? So recall. By the way, this is also the kind of reason over here, in case this was not clear, right? So over here as well, I had my fi of x and I have my hi of x. So because it matches all my constraints, I have fi of x actually less than equal to 0 and hi of x equal to 0, right? So because of this, this value will always be less than 0 as long as my constraints are satisfied. So the same logic kind of applies over here, right? So as long as I have a feasible x prime and lambda, right, this will hold, right? Because we saw over here that this is the f0 and this term is less than or equal to 0. So my L value is actually less than f0 of x, right? Because it's f0 of x plus something negative. All right. So with kind of taking this, so this is point number 1 and this is number 2, right? So we can combine 1 and 2 by saying that this actually holds because of 1, right? And now I apply this at x star and this holds because of 2, right? And lo and behold, this is exactly the dual problem and this is exactly the primal problem, right? So this gives us the fact that the dual is always less than the primal or less than equal to the primal. Okay. So alright, so now I'll maybe go over this example again, right, and see what does it mean to solve the dual. So if you recall, the dual for this was maximize over lambda comma nu, so subject to lambda being greater than or equal to 1, right, which is basically maximize lambda comma nu, and the value of g, so I'm just trying to recall the value of g was this, right? So it was nu1 minus, okay, so this is actually nu1 minus exp of nu1 plus lambda 1 minus 1 minus exp of nu1 plus lambda 2 minus 1, right? Alright, so how do I solve this? Well, it turns out that this is actually a decreasing function in, so this term is actually a decreasing function in lambda 1, right? So similarly, this function is actually a decreasing function in lambda 2. The reason is because it's minus exp of that, right? So if I vary my lambda for a fixed nu, right, and 1 is obviously fixed, so for a fixed nu, if I vary lambda, the exp function will come down. So what it means is that the maximum is attained at lambda 1 comma lambda 2 equal to 0 comma 0, okay, because my lambda is greater than or equal to 0. So the largest value of this, because the decreasing function, the largest value will occur at the 0, 0 point. Okay, so my problem then, so I can get rid of lambda because I know that lambda should be 0, 0. So the problem then is to maximize nu of this, right? So it's v1 minus 1 minus exp of nu1 minus 1, right? So in sometimes I can kind of replace this, and this is basically minus 2 times of this, right? Well, what I can do, I can set the derivative to 0, right? So I take the derivative, so this term is basically g of lambda comma nu, or actually just g of nu. So I take dg of d nu and set it to 0. This gives me that 1 minus 2 exp of nu1 minus 1 is actually equal to 0, which implies that my nu1 is nothing but log of 0.5 plus 1, right? So alright, so basically we saw that we can actually put together the dual over here, which is this term, which is max of lambda comma nu, g of lambda nu, subject to lambda greater than or equal to 0, and the dual problem could actually be solved easily, right? So this is an example of a case where it's not that straightforward to solve the primal problem, but I convert it to a dual problem, right? And I can solve the dual problem. Okay, so the kind of critical thing over here is that do I have my duality, do I have no duality gap, right? Or in other words, does this mean that my primal problem is equal to my dual problem? Well, what we saw is that my primal problem, right? So I don't know if this is equivalent, but I definitely know that my primal problem is greater than or equal to my dual problem, right? So that means that I can get a greater than or equal to solution with this solution that I've achieved. I can get a greater than or equal to, right? I can get a lower bound from my duality. But there are certain conditions in which we can actually show that the primal and the dual problem are basically kind of equivalent, right? All right. So before coming to that, I'll just mention that there are actually kind of other problems that also can be solved, and you can kind of construct the primal and dual. So this is an example. I won't go over this right now in the interest of time, right? But maybe I'll actually put together a kind of bonus lecture where I'll go over some more examples. I'll also put up homework on this. Okay. So, alright. So now the question is, the kind of critical question is that we saw that I have my supremum over lambda. So this is my dual formulation, right? and this is my primal formulation. So my dual formulation is in terms of the max, my primal formulation is in terms of the min. The two problems are equivalent, right? If the two problems are equivalent, then I have something what is called a strong duality, right? And typically, if I don't have strong duality, what I have is that this is actually less than equal to, right? And if I have a strict inequality, so I have a strict less than, then the gap between my primal and dual is called the duality gap. Okay. So the critical condition for duality is called Slater's condition, right? So Slater's condition says that if I'm given a problem where I am minimizing f0 of x and this function is convex, and my constraints fi of x are convex functions, and my hi of x is actually affine, right? So because this is basically ax minus b equal to 0. So if my basically if my equality constraints are affine or linear, and my inequality constraints are actually convex, right? Then strong duality holds. Okay, but the strong duality holds if there exists an x such that fi x is strictly less than 0 for all I, and ax is equal to b. Right? So that means that there exists the x which lies strictly in the interior of my constraint. Right? So this is my constraint, my convex set C. The condition is that I need a point which is in the strict interior of my convex set. So this is basically what this condition is saying. So as long as this is true, I actually have my Slater's condition being true. Okay, so this is actually very, very powerful, and we'll see that duality will play a very, very important role in formulating the problem for support vector machines. Okay, so all right, so we'll end this part over here, and the next part of this lecture we'll actually study the exactly the kind of duality formulation for support vector machines, right? So we start with support vector machines, the primal problem, and then we'll construct the dual problem. Okay, so we'll end this over here. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the lecture.